Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at the SuperSoldier Report. This is a new show that I've developed, particularly for those that are connected to super soldiers. And I felt like we talk about super soldiers in different occasions, and it's just going to be a report. It's not going to be a primary show, but it is an offshoot of disclosures. It's an offshoot of answers from the universe, where I had many of these discussions with Peter the Insider, as well as with James Rink from Super Soldier Talk, and Peter the Insider from the ACIO 12th Division. And so I'm bringing this to you for those of you that it relates to. Not everyone is connected to super soldiers. Many people are doing their work in their own way, and this is not something that's might be relatable to everybody, and anyone can listen, of course. But as we're looking at some of the specifics that I really felt compelled to bring this information to you, I decided to let people know what the primary incentive is, and that is to provide clarity and updates specifically for super soldiers. So here we go. Just to begin with another side note, there is someone brought to my attention to older gentlemen, and they were talking about super soldiers, and to my knowledge they don't have whole lot of information and understanding about it, and yet they were giving quite a bit of advice. I just want to say that age doesn't always mean wisdom, and people talk about all different types of things, and that's their choice. But if you are connected to the super soldier agenda, then it's probably wise for you to gather your information from those that are here to support you, not those that want to either reprogram you or get you to deny, what your purpose is here. And so this is, first of all, let's provide clarity. We are not mercenaries. And that's another piece of information that's a great distortion of what is going on here. They're protectors, and there have been protectors in different names and titles throughout history regarding what this is about. It's not about just going after people randomly. This is to protect the planet. Another thing that needs to be noted is that super soldiers and their experiences are not necessarily have to do with my lab discussions. My lab discussions and people who are experiencers of my labs are not all super soldiers. So this is to put the both of them together. It doesn't make any sense. They overlap, and many super soldiers have experienced my labs. And I'm going to explain why this happens. It starts off where the Council of Five identifies a soul upon the entry of the planet, and sees a soul that has agreements or past experiences as being protectors and helpers. Those who were trained and who can naturally acclimate toward entering into that arena again. And I say arena, I say that lightly because it's not an arena particularly, but more of, standing guard or watch. And these are agreements that you come in upon birth. This is not something that's mind controlled and part of the MyLabbing. The MyLabbing brings in an overlay, a series of problems, triggers, and all sorts of other things. And so the super soldiers that I'm talking about are not related particularly to a Montauk, although some of the super soldiers that came in are a part of Montauk. I'm not. I know that there are government programs, and there are a lot of things going on out there, and that this is, as I mentioned before, this is not what I'm talking about. But those that have experienced that are welcome, and if they need help, we are here. So hopefully that explains a bit, and I can go into it further. But I do think that, you know, some of the explanation needs to be defined. People seem to have a lot of incorrect information, and then I'm hearing the term disinformation, and I think it's the other way around. Those that are trying to correct and tell others what the programs are about, and they're not involved with them, then they, you know, it's like telling someone, you know, in a category, in an area that they're not trained in, or they haven't had any type of experience, knowledge, and, you know, kind of on the outskirts. Maybe that's a problem. They just feel left out. I don't know. But anyhow, all right, so I'm going to move forward. The title of my discussion today is The Agenda of 8's. This is related to mirrored realities, the ultimate deception, 8 tactics, 8 dimensions, 8 planets, and a council of 8, all of which play into this. It was brought to my attention about a week and a half ago, and for some reason I was not able to bring this forward. I understand now why. Because some of those, we're talking about ETs that have certain agendas that are involved with this Council of 8 and the 8th planet, which is Neptune. And so there's this challenge or problems that are arising from it. So those of you that understand, Peter uses the video games because they're a soft disclosure. And this is coming from Monarch Mobius, and providing information regarding the different things that they're showing what they're doing. Like Quantum Break, where, you know, we learned everything about Paul Serene and the plans of Monarch, and to create all of these destructive things to the planet. And so we're looking at some bigger issues here. I mean, they're all very big issues, but this in particular is very important because this is an attack directly on the super soldiers. And as I mentioned before, people having discussions about things kind of throw it with an attempt to throw people off track, so they don't really know where they're going, who they're following. And the premise of this is confusion. A week and a half ago, I heard the term Pachenko. And I went and looked it up, and as I was doing a search for it, and this is part of my communication, I discovered the movie Death Race. The person that is in that movie, one of the actors, Jason Statham, he plays the lead in the movie Death Race. In the Death Race, there is this competition where they hooked him in and kind of set him up, so he ends up going into prison, and they get into this futuristic scenario, and maybe something like this is happening now, but it has an element of the gladiator environment, where they bring racers in. They're equipped with ammunition and some other types of weaponry, and they have to be the first in the race to win. It's all a game. They play it live on television, and then, you know, especially that, you know, this is during the movie. They play it, broadcast it, and they look for ratings. Supposedly, I would imagine that, you know, the incentive is money or power or something. And so here is the warden of this prison who's setting this up. So now I'm saying to my guides, you know, the Council of Five, well, what are you showing me with Pachenko? And they're showing me that how very talented, elite people were being used for the entertainment of this other cause, and for a negative group to be using them and you know, playing like the gladiator display for their own advantage. Now, Pachenko is someone who is put in to the mix. He's the one that sets up Jason Statham in the movie. He shows up at his house, he kills his wife, and, you know, the whole thing is kind of hidden because he has a disguise. And then finally, when he goes back and begins to, he goes into prison and he figures out there's a certain gesture and there's something on his wrist that he identifies. And I don't want to, you know, if someone wants to watch the movie, I'm not going to be a spoiler here, but you can watch the movie. Essentially, he's the one that comes in and turns on the others. He plays the system. So then, a few days later, I had these visions of being in a place where there was glass and mirrors and all sorts of things, and they were showing me this, and I kept on finding these small devices. And then I realized this has to do with The Mirror's Edge, the video game, with Faith Connors is featured in that. And Peter talks about Faith Connors as being a part of Kruger. And essentially, they're couriers, they're runners. And they're able to run for long distances. They don't get winded. It's interesting because if you watch the playing out of the movie or the video game, and kind of just to get an idea what it's all about, there was even one guy that goes in there and starts to talk about all the statistics of what Faith Connors is doing, and essentially saying this is like you know, insurmountable, the amount of running that she has to do. It's just like not humanly possible that someone can keep on running to that degree. So we're looking at this extreme abilities. You know, when you are in this alternate, or I won't say alternate space, this other space, where you are in the astral, you are a super soldier, you're performing tasks and feats that you would not be able to do here. And at that point, you know, you kind of lock into that place where, like Kruger, you're moving and you're doing all sorts of things. But here's the problem, as you notice, when Faith Connors is moving through this game, and she's coming up against all of the glass, the mirrors, the illusion. So the Mirror's Edge aspect creates an environment of illusions. The death race aspect introduces deception and deceit of people wanting to use him in a highly violent Russian roulette-style driving competition. Here are the elements that need to be considered. One is illusions of reality. The second is the integration of realities overlaying and merging with ours. We do have realities that are merging with ours because of some of the quantum manipulations that have been happening through the corporations, as well as even here on Earth through CERN and through the quantum computers. So we have integrations of realities. That's why there have been so many strange things. These present challenges for super soldiers. The illusions of reality have always been there. This is something where you have to get into a place of knowing who you are and be able to differentiate between the two as much as possible. The third part is the inner conflict and miscommunication with peers. There's a distortion and attack on communication, and we'll get into that further. And that is usually coming from those around us and those that want to get the super soldiers to go into conflicts with one another. Number 4, introduction of alternate reality where different rules abide. When you are in the astral space and you encounter an alternate reality, the things that they get away with in the alternate reality is different than what we're able to do here. They have a whole different set of rules, so just be mindful of that. The 5th point is the merging of timelines and how it affects super soldiers. The merging of timelines can do a lot of strange things. It can throw you off balance. You're in one place, and then before you know it, you're in another. It's like that type of dream that skips from one thing to the next, or in a very, very strange place that may even exist, seem very surreal. You may even have a sense of existing, like a timeline where you actually have a feeling like you live in this other place. That's because the timeline is being moved in a place, in an area where it's not supposed to be. And so now you can actually step into that space and see it and have a sense of it through the astral. The 6th point is the overlords or the puppet masters seeking to gain control of super soldiers. I'm seeing this merging because there seems to be an idea that there's a gap of leadership. There's someone's missing in the process. Some of those that, for some that came from Montauk, the leadership, a few are no longer with us physically, but energetically they are, but it's not the same. Others are trying to step in to become the overlords, to become the puppet masters. Remember, if they don't have an interest and care about you, that's going to reflect on the type of information that you receive. The 7th point, super soldiers are then being directed to conflict with other super soldiers as a separation begins. So in the process of coming in, the puppet masters are asserting themselves, providing guidance, very bold, giving directives, and then before you know it, separating one from the other, creating conflicts. And this is something that needs to be set straight, and there must be some awareness of it. The 8th point, there is an attempt of annihilation of super soldiers who become vulnerable due to a disconnect from others. Some of the tactics can also include isolation or being played against one another. And so, therefore, it opens up to the scenario of, like, the death race. So you're dealing with 2 components here. This is the illusion of the mirror's edge, as well as the death race, where there are those that are being told that they need to compete against the other super soldier. This is in direct conflict with the energy, the power, the abilities that you have. And it could actually, either case, whether it is the mirrors or turning on those that you're supposed to be working with, can negate or neutralize your abilities. And they're aware of this. They might not know everything about the super soldiers, but they are aware that if they can divide and conquer, it will nullify everything that this purpose of bringing out the super soldiers at this time when they're most needed. So this is about super soldier conflicts, time warrior illusions and confusions, distortions and illusions of realities. They will set up problems to get the time warriors, or I call them the time warriors or super soldiers, to fight against each other. They're those that are trying to bring conflict, have an intention that the super soldier will lose trust and faith throughout this whole process. They will lose hope that there is an end to the battle, that there isn't an end to the battle, as it will seem to be never-ending. That also is another lie. Of course, there's an end to the battle. And I'm not, if some of you think that I'm referring to the end of the battle, or the battle being my labs and any type of violations to your sovereignty, I'm not referring to that. I'm not talking about molestations or anything of that nature. I'm talking about literally that it's more of being out in battle instead. But many are weary because they do feel constantly attacked and constantly in a struggle of some sort, and they can't quite put a finger on it. And many have talked to me about waking up after being in battle. And when is this going to end? I don't have an exact answer when this is going to end, but I know it will. And to not lose hope. If anything, I can encourage you to not lose hope at this time. I was told that there are 5 super soldiers in particular who will face extreme difficult times because they are still entangled. The reason why they'll have a hard time is because they're still entangled with the ones who are there to deceive them. These are the Pachenkos. These are the ones like Pachenko who are there to deceive. And if you are entangled with them, you need to disentangle, cut off and break ties with them emotionally, and allow them to go off and do whatever it is that they need to do, but you are not here to have an encounter with them. Just be wise enough to recognize what it is. They are also said that they are not sure. These 5 super soldiers will not be sure who to trust. They will go off track where the problem drags them through a series of events that seem impossible and purposeless. The illusions of the mirror's effect are, as Peter mentioned, the mirror's edge. They end up losing abilities because they get put in scenarios where they actually find themselves going after, they discover that they're going after themselves, the reflections of themselves through the mirror. Meanwhile, the Pachenko warrior who goes after them throws them out of the arena, and then that also causes them to be ineffective. And I'm sorry if this sounds a bit confusing, but so the mirror itself, the mirrors of reflection when you are doing going on missions in the astral, ask to have all illusions removed, and then upon removing the illusions, you'll be able to see if there is someone that's turning and going in the opposite direction. The best way to deal with this is to break the mirrors around you. Those are the points of illusion. They may even try to lie and say that they need the mirrors or that you need the mirrors. But once the mirrors are gone, that's when the true abilities emerge. As soon as the mirrors are broken, the death race then begins. And it's not literally a death race. I'm just referencing the movie. But it is essentially having super soldiers go against each other. And so you are to disengage from that as well. As I said, this information is primarily meant for super soldiers, and if it doesn't apply to you and you have a problem with it, then I guess, I'm not going to do a private meeting. I'm just going to put that information out there. You can, I'm sure there's other things that you might find more interesting. But we do need the help of many to keep the dimensional field clear and assist in removing the illusions so the death race doesn't happen. One of the other names, I kept on hearing this name and I wasn't quite sure. It was a name called Melchior. Melchior. I don't know the correct pronunciation, but it's Melchior. And as I was looking at this, I thought, well, that's kind of a strange name. I think that is the name one of the wise men who visited the baby Jesus a long time ago. So I was like, well, I don't know what this means. And as I started digging a little deeper, I found someone by the name of I.B. Melchior. And it turns out that he actually wrote a short story called The Racer. And it was later adapted into a film called Death Race 2000, which in 1975. So this is actually the writer. I had no idea that it was connected. This is actually the writer of the Death Race. But he wrote it in his short story called The Racer, and then it was later adapted. The more I started looking at I.B. Melchior, I found that he talked about time travelers. He talked about the Alpha Centauri, who are some of our protectors. And he talked about so many different things that it looks like, even though he was from another country, I.B. Jorgen Melchior, who was born in 1917, who was a Danish-American novelist. He was born in Copenhagen, and later he served as a counterintelligence corps U.S. Army. So I was looking at how in the world you have this guy from Denmark that comes over to the U.S. later on. He was already in the military for Denmark, and he ended up coming over and being involved with counterintelligence in World War II. The more I started looking at it, I mean, he wrote about Mars, the angry red planet. He wrote the time travelers. The Mars angry red planet was 1959. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. He wrote about reptilians, Reptilicus. These are screenplays. 1961. The Journey of the Seventh Planet. It's funny because I mentioned the eighth planet in 1962. And then he talks about vampires, which are the Anshar, 1965. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then in 1975, Death Race came out. And so the movie Robinson Crusoe, or the story about Robinson Crusoe on Mars, is related to the TV show that we know called Lost in Space. And some remember it, but that came out. I was shocked. This is someone that was clearly in the programs, clearly knew about time travel. He was involved in another episode called The Premonition, The Outer Limits. I mean, there's everything here. There's everything that indicates a person that has information about super soldiers and time travel. So I feel like I'm on track, providing information that's timely. And I literally struggled with this one because it's complex. It's a merging of two concepts at once, which makes it trickier. And Peter has been talking about the Mirror's Edge for a while. He never really got into detail. I feel like I've gotten the information that is necessary to understand what some of the agendas are going on around us, and to give everyone a bit of a heads up for those of you that it concerns. And if you feel like you've been going through some challenges during that astral space, during your sleep, or even day visions, then this is what's going on. Remember, If you need to communicate with me or book a session, we can do that. But some of you, you already know what to do. This is just a little piece of information that will help along the way. So for right now, I think we're finished. You've been listening to the Super Soldier Report, and thank you.